This is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about the things that annoy me in fly fishing. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We need a short intermission episode this season, in part just to kind of break up the flow, because we talked about a lot of really heavy stuff. I was going back and listening to a few of these episodes, and I mean, they're good, if I do say so myself, as far as tips and practical advice, but it's a lot. It's a lot for me to listen to, and so I'm sure it's a lot for you all to listen to. And so I thought it might be fun to start a new tradition here, which is that about halfway through the season, when you are tired of hearing from me, before we transition into the second half of the season, where unfortunately for you, you'll hear more from me, but also we have a number of really interesting interviews lined up for you that I think you'll really enjoy. But before we transition to that, maybe we can have sort of a fun palate cleanser. And I spent some time thinking about what that could be. And it might rotate. Maybe every season I'll come up with some new idea. The beauty about sort of bootstrapping a podcast is that I can largely just make this shit up as we go. But for now, my current thinking is that it would be an awful lot of fun to have a complaint corner episode in the middle of the season. You can probably tell from listening to me talk that I have some opinions about everything, which shouldn't be a surprise to you, but especially about fly fishing, and even more especially about backcountry fly fishing. Those opinions mean that, like most serious fly anglers, I have things about fly fishing and about people and about the industry that sort of irritate me. And there have been other podcasts that have done versions of this, so shout out to the Trout Bitten guys. I really, really enjoy their airing of grievances episodes. They're a lot of fun. I think they're a little nicer probably than I would be about a few of these issues, but they're kind of fun. And beyond that, beyond being good for just a basic, a good laugh or some entertainment value, I think there's value in having these discussions as a fly fishing community. In part because I bet we're not the only people who are annoyed by some of these things, and in part because it's the only way for stuff to get better, right? So especially with today's talk, I'm going to talk about a certain type of behavior that I can pretty much guarantee you everybody who fly fishes hates, and yet it keeps happening over and over and over and over. Some of that might be malice, but I subscribe pretty heavily to a concept called Hanlon's razor, which is that you should never ascribe to malice what could be explained by ignorance. I think the actual phrase might be stupidity, but we'll leave it at ignorance to be diplomatic. And if we don't talk about this stuff, people never learn and they don't know better. And if we kind of shy away from it and we sort of do the thing where we're afraid to come off as elitist or snobby or whatever, then people don't really know the rules of the road. And even though fly fishing is all about creativity and doing things your own way, that's what makes it an art form. It's what drew me to the sport. It's what drew many of you to the sport. And I would never want to take that away. But even so, there are some rules, right? There is etiquette involved. There are best practices involved. There's shit that people do that just sucks and makes it worse for everybody, for us, for the fish, for everybody involved. It just is not great. And if we don't look at those things and acknowledge them, even in a fun, sort of lighthearted way, then they're just never going to get better. And I'm not really a big fan of shying away from that. And I'm pretty grumpy. So I just, I have some stuff that annoys me. And so this season's intermission is going to be a discussion of one particular complaint that I have that is just so widespread and so ubiquitous on some trout streams that it almost doesn't need an introduction. And that is the practice of high-holing. I am going to tell you a quick story from a couple of weeks ago when I was out fishing to get us started here. I was on a favorite stream of mine, not too far from Denver. This is not really a backcountry stream. It does require a hike, so it's not like right off the side of a road. It's a little bit off the beaten path. A lot of people haven't heard of it. It's not an incredible fishing stream, to be honest with you, but it's pretty and it's quiet and it'll do in a pinch. It's actually a tailwater, interestingly enough, but one that most people haven't heard of. And I decided I had a Sunday afternoon free. I very often fish Sunday afternoons, but on this particular Sunday, I had a little bit more time than usual. And so I decided to drive up to this stream and do some fishing. So I threw my pack in the truck, jumped in the old Tundra, cruised on up to the stream. It was about an hour and a half drive for me. Got there, got out, suited up. Parking lot was pretty full, but most of those are day hikers and people that are out there to do stuff other than fishing. Strapped on my waders, threw on my backpack, started walking up the road and sort of fishing selectively as I went. I was doing that for probably, 30 minutes or so. Then I caught a few, and then I came around a bend in the river, and I kept on fishing through this little sort of pool, rock garden-y area, and I look up, and up above me on the trail, the river is, as usual, sort of set down this fairly steep embankment, so people on the trail are, 20 or 30 feet up above you. I look up, and there is a guy standing up there. He's got his sun shirt on, he's got the sun shirt hood on, he's wearing the sunglasses, and he's got his fly rod tube that he's holding in his hand because he doesn't have a backpack on, and he's got his, fanny pack, hip pack. I don't want to be offensive to you guys that use those things, but, whatever. So he's up there, and I see him looking at the water. And he's looking at the water right ahead of me. He looks at me, and I did what I always do. I stopped fishing, and I just looked right at the dude. Just staring at him, thinking, man, please don't do that. I know what you're thinking, but please don't do that. He looked at me. I looked at him. He looked at me. I looked at him. And then he turned away, and I knew what he was going to do. He climbed down that embankment, and I will be damned. That man hopped into the river no more than 30 yards ahead of me and started fishing the juiciest pool in that section of stream. This annoyed me considerably, as you might imagine. But being the good, even-tempered fly fisher that I am, I climbed out. I decided not to have a confrontation with the guy. There was a time in my life where I would have said something to him. I might have even delivered a little bit of river justice where you accidentally wade through the place where they're fishing, maybe toss a rock or two in the water, say something about their mom. I had those days when I was younger, but I've tried. I've tried to mature. I've tried to get better. So I decided that this guy probably didn't really know what he was doing. He had kind of beginner gear. He had all the telltale marks of somebody who hasn't been fly fishing for long. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna let that go. My mom would be proud. I'm gonna let it go. So I climb up over the embankment, get back on the trail. I walk by the guy. He's fishing away. Casting is terrible, of course. Not to be super judgmental. I'm not usually the guy that watches people fish and judge, but this guy was not going to catch a fish, which is kind of criminal because the section that he was fishing was so juicy that flogging it with his line in a way that was not going to produce a trout was a crying shame, to be honest. But be that as it may, I walked on past him and I kept walking. I probably walked at least a half mile, I would say, above this guy. Past several bends in the river. I mean, I left him a ton of stream, more than enough stream for me to not have to see him again, way beyond where he could see me or I could see him. And then I thought, okay, that's good enough. And I jumped back in the river and I started fishing again. And I fished. I caught a couple fish. I did my thing. I was hanging out, just having a good time out there, right? And I come around another bend and I look up at the embankment and that same dude is standing up on the embankment staring at me again. And once again, as I am looking at him, he climbs down the embankment and he jumps in the stream 30 yards ahead of me and starts fishing, if you can call what he was doing fishing. Being charitable, but he starts doing it again. So now I'm kind of mad at this point, right? But I still am like, I'm not going to do this. It's a good day of fishing. It's a Sunday. The sun's out. Life's good. I just don't want to mess with this dude. It's not worth it. So I climb back out. And I get back on the trail and I walk up above this guy, probably another quarter mile this time, maybe a little further, but definitely far enough that I'm way, way up ahead of the guy. Jump back in, start fishing. About 10 minutes later, I look up, guy's in the river ahead of me again. Same process. I get out, go back to the trail, hike up a little bit more, get back in the river. He shows up a fourth time, guys, 4 times on the same stretch of stream with the same guy jumping in right above me. And at this point, I had to say something to him. And I went up to the guy and I said, look, dude, like, I'm all about you being out here and fishing, but you don't need to jump in the river right ahead of me. He sort of, well, why not? It's public water. I can do what I want, asshole. And gave me the shtick, right? Which is what I've learned, that whenever you confront people about this on the river, you kind of get the shtick. And it usually involves some variation of, well, it's public water and I can do what I want. Which, as I've said, used to result in me saying, okay, well, then I can do what I want, and then sloshing through whatever they were trying to fish to make sure that they were not going to have a good time there. But I have grown as an individual. And so I just told him, look, man, that's just not how we do it, dude. Like, that's just not how it works. I'm leaving anyway. I've done my thing. I got to get going, but not cool, man. He didn't care. He kept on doing his thing. Or maybe he did care. He was just trying not to show it. But I went back up. I got on the trail and I hiked out and I went home. And that was probably the most egregious example of high holing that I've had for a while. 4 times pretty bad with the same guy, especially on a piece of stream that really had nobody else on it. I mean, it was like me and this guy and maybe one other guy who I saw at some point on the trail. Plenty of room for us to spread out. It was pretty egregious, but it wasn't the only example. And in fact, there are a lot of streams where this is commonplace, right? So certain sections of the South Platte, high holing is going to happen to you, right? The frying pan, high holing is going to happen to you. I mean, there are places where this is just going to happen because there's so many damn people on the river that they're just, 50 yards or 100 yards is about as good as you're going to get, and you learn to expect it. But in places that are a little further out, where the fishing pressure is lighter, where there's plenty of room to spread out, and then it happens, it sucks. And so I want to talk about it today because it sucks, okay? High holing is not cool. It's not fun. It's not a good thing to do. It ruins the experience, both for the guy you're high holing and probably for you, because every time you do it, you're probably going to piss somebody off, right? And at the very least, you're going to have to spend your day wondering if this dude's pissed off about it and if he's going to retaliate somehow. I would find that stressful because I'm out there to fish and find a little bit of peace, not to get into a fight with some other asshole. But, if you don't find it stressful and you like that, cool. I guess you might be a sociopath and you should probably seek some treatment for it. I would personally find that pretty stressful. So that sucks because it kind of ruins your day. But beyond that, it kind of ruins the other guy's day, right? This guy's fishing. He's having a good time. For you to jump in and front end him that way or high hole him that way really can put a big dent in his day. And that sucks because we're all out there to enjoy the river. We're all out there to enjoy the fishing. And it sucks to wreck somebody else's day and piss them off. So let's start with that. Don't high hole. Before we get into the details here, just don't high hole people, okay? And by high holing, I mean jumping into a stream directly above somebody else. And, like I mentioned, this can vary by river, but let me just give you a basic piece of advice or a rule of thumb that you can follow. If you are close enough to the other guy that you can hear each other clearly in like a fairly normal tone of voice or even a slightly raised voice, you're way too close to the other person. That's like a red flag. If you can have a conversation with the other guy, even if it's kind of a shouted one, you're way too close to that guy. You need to move on. I actually subscribe to the belief that you should be far enough away from other anglers whenever possible that you can't see the other guy. I don't want to see you. No offense. I'm sure you're handsome. I'm sure you're great. I'm sure you have lots of qualities. Your mother loves you. I don't want to see you when I'm fishing. In fact, most of the places that I go fishing, I go to the backcountry in particular because I don't want to see any other human beings while I'm out there, right? And even though I know that I can't have that on public streams close to major population centers, I get it. I'm not a total naive, you-know-what. I still would prefer not to see you if I don't have to. I'm aware that you're there. I might see you at a distance, but I don't want to look up and be able to see, what kind of fly you're tying onto your line. That's just absurd. And I don't want to fish through the section that I'm fishing, not knowing if you just walked right through the middle of it. And there's really no reason for it most of the time. I mean, except on the most crowded streams, you can find a place to fish that is not right on top of another dude. It's just unnecessary, and you don't need to do it most of the time. So please don't. Before we get into the details of why this sucks, let's just say it does suck. If you see somebody else fishing, keep walking until you can't see that person fishing anymore, and then maybe you can get in the river. If you're in a situation where you absolutely have to get in ahead of that guy, I mean, I can't even really fathom when that would happen unless the river is just incredibly crowded, and there are people like every 50 yards. But if that were to happen, just talk to the guy, right? Like, come talk to me. Ask me if I'm going up or downstream. The correct answer is pretty much always upstream, but there are situations where it might change. Talk to me. Ask me. Be like, hey, man, do you mind if I jump in up here? I'm just trying to get in through this run, and then I got to get out of here, whatever. I'm probably going to say yes if you ask nicely. If you just jump in and don't say anything to me, then it goes from I can live with that to that guy sucks. To just talk. Are you going up or down? Do you mind if I hop in here? I know I'm a little bit close to you. I'm not trying to get in your face. I'm just trying to work around whatever the situation or obstacle happens to be. Just have the conversation, okay? Don't be like my buddy on this trail where you're standing up on the embankment eyeballing me so I know you know what you're about to do, and then jump in without saying a word. It's the worst of the worst. High-holing sucks. If you're a high-holer, you suck. Don't do it anymore. All right, so there's the part where I bitch about things, okay? And you get the broad sort of moral of the story, which is don't high-hole because it makes you a shitty angler and it means that you suck. Don't do that. But here's the educational part. This is the part where I talk about why it sucks. On the off chance that anybody listening to this at any point, maybe now, maybe at some point in the future, whenever, but just for posterity's sake, I'm going to explain why it sucks so that we don't have that person out there that's like, well, that's just a snobby fly fisherman thing and their etiquette rules are stupid and I don't care about their rules and I'm going to do what I want because they don't make sense. Okay, cool. I still get therapy, man. Like, it's okay to have rules and etiquette that don't immediately make sense to you. And it's okay to follow those things too. It's like, not eating with your hands at a nice restaurant. Could you do it? Sure. Would it be more efficient than a fork? Probably. But you still probably shouldn't do that. So manners are cool. If you're the type that's like, well, I don't care about your manners, well, then that sucks. Work on yourself. But if you're not that type and you just need it explained so you know why not to do it, I'm going to explain it. Let's start with this. And it's something we've talked about on the podcast before. When fish sit in a river, they face upstream. They have to face upstream because their bodies are designed that way. Their bodies are designed to be able to blade through the water, almost like an airplane wing. So they're very sort of aerodynamically or hydrodynamically designed so that the water flows from head to tail. Their muscle systems are designed for them to be facing upriver so that they're able to swim and hold their position in the current and move around. Their gills are designed to function best when they're facing into the current, so they're getting that running water over their gills, bringing fresh oxygen to them so they can breathe the whole time. And most importantly for fly fishermen, they face upstream because that's where the food comes from, right? These fish are hanging out in the current, facing upstream, waiting for bugs to come down on conveyor belts so they can eat them. They're the laziest animals in the world. They don't want to move around a lot. They don't want to expend a bunch of energy. So they're sitting there facing upstream, waiting for the current to literally wash bugs into their mouth or close enough to their mouth that they can move and get it. So the fish are facing upstream. That means that you are almost always going to be fishing upstream, which means that you're going to be fishing from downstream of the fish, okay? Part of that is because then you're behind them so they can't see you. That makes you stealthier. Believe it or not, a trout is not likely to eat your fly if you throw it at his face while standing in front of his face. They're not brilliant creatures, but they're not quite that stupid. So you got to stand behind them so they don't know you're there. Stealth matters. Most of you who fly fish know this. But secondly, it's really hard to get a good drift fishing downstream where the fly is being pulled away from you. It's not impossible. There are certain terrain features and certain water features that need to be fished downstream. There are certain types of fly fishing tactics like streamers, for instance, or wet flies that work better if you're throwing them downstream or quartering downstream. But 95% of the time, you're going to want to throw your flies upstream because that upstream cast lets you get a better presentation. And by that, I mean, it makes it easier for you to get a solid dead drift that makes it look like your bug is floating down the river like a natural thing rather than something attached to a line. Much easier upstream, okay? So you're going to be fishing upstream the vast majority of the time that you are fishing in a river. that means that you are going to be moving your way up the river throughout the day, right? Because you're probably, we've talked about this too, I'm an active fly fisher. I do not spend time just staying in one spot for like 2 hours. I don't know how people do that. I see people do it. I actually was fishing, a month ago, and I went out in the morning and there was a dude fishing a spot, and I went by him and I fished all day for like 6 hours or something. And I came back and that guy was still fishing the same spot, which I admire the persistence and the patience. I really do. But that's wild to me, right? Like I'll hop in a stream, and in the wintertime, I'll probably cover at least a mile, maybe a little bit more when I'm moving slow and nymphing. Summer and spring, when the water's warm and the fish are moving, man, I might rip through 3-4 miles of stream in a day, maybe more than that, depending on how aggressive I'm being. But I'm moving upstream all day, right? And that means that if you jump into the stream right ahead of me, you're blowing up my rhythm. Okay, so you're kind of messing up where I'm going. You're cutting me off. It's like throwing a spike strip in front of a car on the highway. You're slowing me down. Now I got to get out and I got to walk way up, and it jacks up my whole plan and my whole rhythm. On top of the fact that very often when this happens, if you were to take a river and sort of chunk it up into pieces or sections, you're going to have these sort of interesting features, right? Where you've got toward the back of it, your pools and your glides and your tail outs, and then you have sort of maybe another glide, and then you have some riffles, and then maybe there's a plunge pool and a rock garden. But, the terrain varies. The river system varies. The structure of the river and the type of water varies. And very often when you are fishing a certain section of river, let's say you hopped in and now you're going to work your way up, you're probably fishing it as a cohesive section. So you might hop in at the back, again, because you don't want to hop in at the front, because if all those fish see you, they're probably going to run away like they just saw a huge hairless ape trying to stab them in the face with a hook and drag them through the water. So you're probably going to start at the back, but the back is probably not the best water. Now, there are exceptions to this, right? In the wintertime, maybe the back is the best water. All the rest of the time, though, the back is probably not the most productive. You're just fishing it so that you don't miss any fish while you work your way up to the good stuff. And I have noticed very often that I'll pick a piece of river, maybe it's 100 yards, or something. I pick a distance, but not very far. And I will start at the back in the kind of the crappier water and work my way up to the really juicy stuff, rather than starting in the juicy stuff and foregoing all the water behind it, because now those fish are spooked. Or just cherry picking the river, which I think is, there are times to cherry pick, but you ever really want to get good at fly fishing, you got to fish all of it and learn how to fish all of it, and not just go straight to the good stuff and then get out of the river and walk to the next good stuff. It's not a great way to learn and get better at angling. But in any case, most of the time that means that if you high hole somebody, they have spent their time working their way through the sort of meh water, trying to get to the really good stuff at the top of the section, and you have now cut them off from that. And most often I find, intentionally or unintentionally, that is the best part of that section. So it's not just that they got in the river ahead of me, it's that they got into the best damn section of that water that I was looking to fish and was working my way up to and looking forward to. And that sucks, guys. Like it's like, I don't know, stealing the last couple pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, right, when somebody's about to finish it. Or taking 10 pieces off of a Lego Batmobile so that nobody can put it together the right way. Like it stops me from being able to complete the section of river and fish the best part of that section of river. And that sucks. It's frustrating for me to work my way up to it, do everything right tactically, work my way up from downstream, and then watch you jump in and fish the damn riffle or the plunge pool or the bend or whatever it is, and just catch a fish or not, but blow it up so that I don't get to enjoy it. That sucks. It's not cool. Related to that, when you have somebody get in ahead of you, they're going to disrupt all of that water, right? So just like I just said, you want to come up from behind the fish so you don't spook them. Well, you could be doing that, but now somebody has jumped in ahead of you, so now the fish can all see him, right? So not only is he fishing the section of water that you wanted to fish and screwing you on that one, but he's probably also splashing around if he's waiting or whatever, in full vision and full visibility of all the other fish behind him, the fish that are in front of you. And so now he's screwing up your ability to even fish the remaining water between you and him because he has jumped in upstream of these fish and possibly he's kicked dirt up into the water and sediment. There's a disruption in the water that the fish are going to pick up on. And so now he has materially made your fishing worse before you even get up there. And that really sucks because now he's kind of blown up the whole section. And then if he keeps moving, so like let's say that there are two types of high holers. There's the high holer, well, let's say three types. The first one is the high holer who jumps in, cherry picks you, catches a fish or doesn't, and then gets back on the trail and leaves and goes up to the next thing and high holes the next guy, right? He's the hobo high holer. He is transient. He goes between people. He screws everybody equally. Then you have the stationary high holer, which is usually a really inexperienced guy. I had a guy do this to me in a very famous canyon here last winter, where he jumped in and just kind of posted up. He like dropped all his stuff on the ground. He put down his backpack. He put down his water bottle. He was just going to fish that spot. And in the end, he turned out to be a nice enough guy that I actually offered him a couple of flies and left him to it, whatever. But they're the flagpole high holer, right? They just they're going to plant the flag and they're just going to stand there all damn day. They're not going to go anywhere. They're probably the best type because you're only going to see them once. You're still going to be there trying to catch a fish in like 9 hours. So cool. Then you have the worst type of high holer. This is by far the most damaging type of high holer. And this is the waiting high holer or the persistent high holer, whatever you want to call him. This is the guy who gets into the river ahead of you, fishes that water, screws up your water, and then doesn't get out of the river. And instead just gets in and starts wading upstream and fishing everything above you. These guys are completely screwing you because now they are fishing and wading through all the water that you might have fished coming up behind them and putting down probably every fish in the river. I cannot tell you how many times I have run through, and this is not necessarily high holing, but it's a good example, a section of river that is incredibly fishy, often one that I've fished before. The conditions are great, water temperatures are great, weather's great, there's bugs everywhere, everything's perfect, and I'll pick up like one fish or two fish or sometimes no fish. And I'm like, man, what the hell is going on? What is happening here? And I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I come around a corner, and sure enough, there is a guy standing there on the bank who I know just waded through that water or fished through that water and spooked all the fish and put them down. So now they're not eating anything. It is sort of the same thing. If you fish at the end of the day, you don't know how long it's been since the last angler went through that piece of water. And that can have a huge effect on your fishing. And it's a variable that you can't control and you don't often see. Except that if you see the high holer do it, you know you're screwed. Like that guy's just going to keep working his way upstream. It's going to keep disrupting all the fish. And you're coming up behind him, batting cleanup like a Hoover vacuum, trying to pick up the few fish that you can, struggle bussing while he has all the fun. Or, because I find that most high holers are not very good at fly fishing for whatever reason, he just isn't catching any fish at all. And then no one's catching any fish because he's not catching the fish and you're screwed out of catching the fish and the fish are all hiding under rocks. And it sucks and it just ruins your day. So high holing objectively is not cool. It's not just that it's etiquette. It's not just that it's manners. It's not just that it's a norm in the fly fishing community. It's that it objectively screws up fishing for everybody on the river. And if you do it to other people, eventually somebody's going to do it to you. And I promise, if you really want to piss off a high holer, I've done this before, I'll get up, go around them, and I'll jump in the river 10 feet above them. Just start fishing. If they say something to me, I'll be like, oh man, I thought that's just how we were doing it today. I thought we were going to cuddle fish. You were up above me. Now I'm up above you. They're usually not very happy about it because they know it's going to screw up the fishing. Nobody wants that. We want to go fishing. We want to be happy. We want to catch fish. I would prefer to be on a stream where there are no other people. I'd rather be 5 or 6 or 10 miles off in the backcountry where I'm just not going to see another human. That's why I spend my time doing that. But there are times where I'm just going to be fishing on a river closer to home or something that's not quite as remote or not quite as rugged. And there are just going to be other people around, right? There are millions of people in these metro areas, and a lot of them are taking up fly fishing. You're going to see other people eventually. And it really makes sense for all of us to learn to play nice in the sandbox, not just because it's the right thing to do, not just because it's etiquette, not just because it stops confrontation on the river, but because it makes the fishing better for me, for you, for that guy, for the next guy. If we could just stop doing this shit, everybody would have a better time on the river fly fishing. And I think there would be fewer fights, fewer angry Reddit posts, fewer angry forum posts, and we could all stop talking about high-holing. We can just get back to the fishing part. Anytime you're dealing with human factors in fishing, sucks. We're out there to interact with fish and nature, not with people. And when we're dealing with human behavior that's messing up our fishing, that means we're dealing with people. That means you're cheapening the experience, and that sucks. And if you do it, you suck too. So please stop high-holing people, and especially stop high-holing me. And if that guy who I saw out there listens to this podcast, you know who you are. I know you know who I am. I was the dude wearing the big green backpack eyeballing you all day, and I'm pretty positive you're going to know this story when you hear it. Just think about your life, man. Don't do that again. Okay? I'm not mad at you. I don't even know your name. I hope I see you out there again sometime. But I really hope next time we can do it in a way that's more civilized. Whew. Okay. I'm done yelling into the microphone now. Sorry. I'm not sorry. High-holing sucks. This was my first complaint in the complaint corner. There will be more. Don't worry. But I think we've covered this one adequately. I hope you're going away somewhat amused, maybe also a little bit righteously angry. But in any case, having taken a little break from the hardcore fishing minutia and caught your breath, because we're going to be back next week with a whole bunch more really interesting stuff, including several episodes that involve interviews with people who are an awful lot more interesting than yours truly, you lucky ducks. So, hope you have a great week. Hope you're having fun out there. I really hope you didn't high-hole anybody this week. If you did, I hope you feel really bad about yourself and know that your parents are disappointed in you and that you should do better. But in any case, go catch your fish, have some fun on the water, do the right thing by other anglers, and I'll see you back here next week. Till next time, this is Ross, and maybe I'll see you out there. But you better not be high-holing me.